That's fine.
So, John, would you start by going back to the first Management Theory at Work conference and just describe what was being discussed in terms of the learning company and leadership at that time?
I could. I don't remember it in any detail. How long ago was it, Will?
About 12 years ago,
Crikey. Yeah.
2002, three, that sort of time.
Righty-ho. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I suppose we were somewhat with our first generation of learning company stuff, though that kicked off around 1990, so it'd been going, a while by then, presumably. Um, I would imagine, I don't know whether we discussed at the time, but knowledge management would have kicked in, and probably dynamic capability, which is the kind of knowledge management sort of equivalent of that, based on a different sort of theoretical base. That's more economics and theory of the firm. Um, Other than that, I can't remember very much. So
What struck me at the first one was that the whole idea of the learning company, or especially Peter Senge's ideas, was being
yeah,
criticised as being too vague, and it was
okay,
almost as if it was sort of time to move on from those ideas. So leadership would
okay.
have been one direction for it, and critique was another way to go.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I'm sure
But
you're right.
I've just noticed that it seems to be coming back a bit. So that
Okay,
I've noticed the Handbook of Research on the Learning Organisation has been published.
fair enough. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's more the academic side of it. Is that the Anders Autumnblad one?
That's yeah, because at
Yeah.
the time he was quite critical from the point of view of vagueness of the learning organisation idea.
Okay.
So it seems he's maybe got more support for those ideas now than was so around that time.
Possibly. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Guess that makes sense.
So when you contributed to that, you've mostly written, I think, about networks, which I guess is the in terms of the learning organisation, one of the developments of that.
It is. Yeah, and we're still on about that. Yeah, that's true.
Would you say a bit more about the networks idea and where that changes the approach?
Well, I mean, it's very much another perspective. So if the organisation has internal and external links, one of the interesting ideas is that if the internal links are strong and the external ones are weak, at the extreme you get a kind of cult. And if it's the other way around, well, in the extreme, the organisation explodes rather than implodes. Um, but one interesting thing is that action learning sort of balances the two, because action learning sort of builds the internal links within the set, but also anchors them with whoever the stakeholders are in the challenge that they're working on. So it kind of balances the two. So that's good news for action learning, to put it that way.
So how would action learning be set up in that way? How would it work with outside networks?
Well, I mean, that's the way action learning works anyway, because action learning, a group of people work on individual or collective challenges. So it's it doesn't change action learning, but it's a new perspective on what it does and how it can help a learning organization.
Okay. Did, can I take you on to the state of salvation, which was one of the
Okay, yep,
aspects of the talk
okay, right. Yes,
that that,
please
that,
do, yeah.
that you gave? Is it,
Okay, well, that's about leadership and the argument. I mean, it's based on Keith Grint's idea that um, there's a kind of pendulum that swings between what he calls human relations and management science. That's the hard and the soft. And leadership has been very much at the human relations soft end, and that was the reason for the credit crunch, because they didn't do the numbers, or somebody else did the numbers, and they didn't take much notice. So the upshot of that is that leadership needs to sort of regain that balance and bring in the science bit, as well as, not instead of, the soft human relations thing, and that's in the context of needing to be more ethical and operating in a world that's increasingly virtual. So those are the three aspects of it: rebalancing the science-human relations bit, and dealing with ethical and moral issues, and leadership in increasingly virtual organizations. And that's kind of interesting because I think at the moment virtual leadership is traditional leadership, just by a different medium, but sooner or later there's going to be a new form of leadership specifically appropriate to virtual teams and organizations and virtual everything.
Can we come on to that a bit later, because I know you've got points about how business schools relate to web companies, or don't.
Or don't, yeah, more to the point. Yeah, that's the case, and I think that's right. I think business schools, and it should be a worry for them. You don't really see the kind of Amazons and Googles and eBays on their client list for whatever reason.
Can I just go back, John, a little bit to the ethics in that context? Because I noticed there's quite a lot of interest in mindfulness and meditation as
there is indeed these days.
Contribution.
Yeah, I quite agree.
And I wonder where that fitted in with the ethics, because it seems to me the ethical aspects of meditation practices aren't, I've got to be careful what I say, but they're not always up front in the way it's
no, I agree.
So I wonder what connections you see in those.
To be honest, I don't know that much about mindfulness. I mean, I know of it, but and I don't know to what extent, though it probably does, that deals with the ethical and the moral.
Okay, well, we'll try and cover that elsewhere in the conference, make some other connections. But I could see it as fitting in with what you were saying earlier about the salvation, and how those ideas fitted in with the learning company discussion.
Yep, sounds good.
Well, should we just go on with the business school aspect, because
okay.
You did mention in the book, The Manager's Guide to Self-Development, the last update on that, you asked for some feedback on business schools that were consulting with web companies, and as I understand it, you haven't been told of very many examples of that. Is that still the case?
It is, yeah. Well, I haven't really had much response at all either way, so I suspect that means I'm right. That could do with further. I mean, I think it's beginning to be on the agenda on the research side, but not so much on the teaching and consulting side, which may be fair enough. That's perhaps where it's appropriate for it to start.
So there's a bit of a gap then between where the web companies are at and where the business schools are at. Is that right?
I would say so. Yes, for sure, definitely.
So where do you think the MOOC ideas fit into this? Because not all the universities have decided to support MOOCs or offer MOOCs for different reasons. Do you think?
There are a lot have, but that's about their own delivery, isn't it? And that could still be, and probably is, sort of fairly conventional stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Well, perhaps we'll come back to this as to how those things fit together.
Okay.
Would you say a bit about design science? Because I know you've mentioned this as a theory that, well, it relates to action learning, but it also relates to how business skills could be more relevant in their research through design
True.
science.
True. Yeah.
Do,
Right. Well, there's two things. There's the mode one, mode two, um, and then there's design science, and I think they're talking about more or less the same thing. But I mean, I think mode one, mode two is about a broader range of stakeholders, whereas design science is about addressing, practical problems. So, engineering is a design science, physics is an analytical science, and so on and so forth. Medicine, biology, but they're into the same thing. And in the kind of business school, university context, through the very influential research assessment thing, there's a lot of emphasis on what they call impact, um, which calls for more mode two stroke design science research. I think that's about the size of it.
right. And so, do you think that's actually been happening? Do you think there's much that can be identified as design science from a
Well, it's
business
happening. I
point of
mean,
view?
it may not be happening as far and as fast as some people might wish it to, but it's certainly happening. And as I say, that's driven by the influential research assessment exercise.
Does it cross over into teaching and learning very effectively?
Um,
Because I've seen descriptions of online learning, MOOCs and so forth as design science. So design
okay,
science
that's good. Yeah, I didn't
for
know that.
teaching.
I think so. So, for example, I think on courses where they have something like a dissertation at the end, there's a trend to move away from your traditional academic one to do a practical problem solving project. So I think it's happening in that way. And then if that's happening, the content of the course has to change a bit to support that change. So I think it is happening.
Okay. Well, I just think it's well worth looking at because I think if design science had the same meaning in a wider audience or a wider group of people just have the same set of ideas, it could help sort of link in the management of universities and the teaching in universities.
Yeah, I
To
agree.
sort
I
out
agree.
how the technology might be changing things.
True. Yeah, I agree.
Because going back to mode one, mode two, I mean that was supposed to take account of how knowledge was being generated outside of universities, as I've understood it. So
Partly. Yeah, I think that's true. I think that's the case. Yeah.
so there's if there's still a gap with the web companies, there's quite a lot of scope for more contact between them.
Yeah, yeah. Though with all kinds of companies, but that would be good. Yeah.
So John, I'll just switch. No, I won't switch to myself. I'll just explain the radio part of it and see how much sense it makes to you.
Okay.
Um, we're going to have this day in Exeter,
Yeah.
which is part of Dark Times. We got the loan of a theatre, so basically
Okay.
that's the reason for doing a face-to-face version of management theory at work.
That's good.
We'll try and keep things going online through Google Hangouts and so forth um,
Okay. That's good too.
over the next few weeks.
Good.
So
Yeah.
I think this one's working okay, and maybe we can do another one as it goes along, and
Yeah.
we'll edit out little bits for radio.
Don't see why not. Yeah.
So I just wonder, is your impression this sort of thing is becoming normal now that there are bits of online social media, be they sound or YouTube or whatever, that relate
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure it is
going on?
fully normal yet, but there's a lot more of it than there used to be.
Right, and you're okay with it. You're finding you can work with it.
Oh, I would welcome it. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, well that is good. I'll move on I'm moving on a bit quickly, just because we're going to edit this so that we've got headings for other YouTube clips, and we can expand on it later if we think we've missed a lot out. Um, but I wonder what you make of critique now, because at the first one, my memory is that the first management theory at work conference, that Chris Gray spoke about relevance, and he was really saying, I think, that universities had a more secure role in critique of economics and society, rather than putting forward consultancy ideas.
Yeah, I think that's true, and that's still the case. Yeah.
Do you think that the critique scene is coming more towards offering alternatives? I noticed that the recent
Um,
conference that they've had seems to have, just seemed to me to have more of that aspect in it. So that, and it's always all in there, I know, but I just wonder if there's a bit of a change at the moment, or what you.
yeah, I think so, albeit perhaps a bit gradual, a bit too gradual for some people's taste. Yeah, but I think it's there.
So in a way that might fit better with Action Learning and the Learning Company,
I
if,
would have thought
if
so.
there's
I
some
would have
sort of
thought so.
projects
Yeah.
that are going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that's worth checking out from time to time. See how that might work.
I agree. I agree. Yep, I think that's right.
So again, we're going to try and get some feedback from the recent Critical Management Studies conference, and whether else will turn up or comment on what we're doing. I think that the last area I'd like to talk about is an update to the book, because I understand that the Learning Company book, there will be an update, and I wondered what you're doing to research it at this time.
Well, it's certainly moving slowly, but in the last few days, I've done a bit of a two-page outline, which I could perhaps talk through on another occasion for 20 minutes or so. But it's I think we want to sort of still stay with the old stuff because that still works. But I
Right.
don't know if you know Senge's notion of reactive, adaptive, and generative. Well, I think what the original learning company model fits most easily with the adaptive. So I think we want to expand it to fit the generative. We want to expand it to bring in the network perspective, network theory take on things which we've just discussed, implosion, explosion, and the role of action learning in balancing those two. I think we're going to set it against the background of our sort of era type model. We call it the zigzag model. That it's where you can go, hunter gathering, agriculture, manufacture, mentofacture, which was knowledge management, where leadership came in to management, and then on where it becomes a bit unclear, but it was certainly encompass the things that we talked about in relation to beyond leadership, basically. And that's about as far as we've got at the moment.
Would you use more video and other sorts of media than just books, because you link a lot in the structure of your books. You refer a lot to what other people are doing, and I wondered if you'd
Yeah,
made.
we certainly will. I mean, in practicing, the publishing world seems to be a bit slow, though I know, with Kindle and stuff like that. But I mean, on the manager's guide, the hard copy book is far exceeding the Kindle Shorts. That is the alternative format. And maybe partly because of the way the McGraw-Hill's market it, because I think maybe you kind of get the Kindle Shorts free as a supplement to the book. But yeah, so even Kindle Shorts, which is virtual text rather than anything more ambitious, seems to be a sufficient challenge. So when we get to video, though, I don't see why not. How visual a subject it is worth discussion, but I'm sure there's something that can be done.
Well, I was thinking, for example, Nancy Dixon. I noticed she was one of the writers that you mentioned in the
True.
current version. She's got several YouTube clips.
Actually, well, good for her.
Could be just listed in the book, or through a website or whatever. And I guess there's other clips that would make sense as well. John?
Yeah, I expect that's happening. Yeah. So you're right, Will.
Yeah. No, you just disappeared. Your vision disappeared for a moment.
Yeah, the battery on my iPhone is down to
30%. Oh, right. Okay.
It'll probably last another 10 minutes, quarter an hour, which hopefully will do us for now.
Okay, sure. Yeah, no, that's the sort of problem. But yeah, what I was thinking is that the structure of your books, both the Manager's Guide to Self-Development and the Learning Company books, show a lot of other resources that could be used.
Yeah, that's true. Yes, and I'm sure we'll continue to do that by whatever medium is current and the market is prepared to use, basically.
Right. So I think perhaps while the battery lasts, we should come back to the idea of virtual leadership and where you see that going.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure there's a lot more to be said about that. I think we'll certainly bring those three trajectories into the learning or company stuff. And as I say, I think the virtual one is perhaps, to me at least, the most interesting. And whether there's a new form of leadership that will eventually emerge, I think there's all to play for under that heading.
Right. Okay. Well, John, shall we leave it there? Because I think that's an interesting point to leave it on.
Suits me well. That suits me.
What I'll do is break this down into clips.
Okay.
And see what response we get. And then maybe set up another one later on and invite other people to join us.
Yeah, let's do that, Will. Sounds good.
Okay. Well, that's good. Thank you.
And you.
So don't go. I'll just stop the broadcast and then I'll speak a little bit more.
Okay. Well.